Welcome back. I'm telling the story of when I bought my first house almost. Now, if you missed that story, that was in part 1, so you're gonna wanna click the link, which I'll give you up here and in the description. So you gotta go watch that video first, and then you can come back here, because in this video, I'm gonna share with you 10 lessons that I learned from when we tried to buy our first house / didn't buy, and then eventually did buy our first house. It was quite the story. So first of all, with picking an agent, I'm gonna give myself a thumbs up on that one. We called an agent, we got referrals from someone that they could vet for me as a buyer. So if you're thinking about buying in Minnesota, I mean, you guys are spoiled now because you've got YouTube. You can kind of do some of that vetting and see who you think is gonna be a good fit. Obviously, I'm hoping you'll call me. But if you're moving from Minnesota out, I can actually do that vetting for you as well. So if you're in Minnesota now, we'll sell your house here, you're moving to Florida, I can find you an agent there. I can do some of that vetting, make sure you get it good. So hire a good agent. Second thing, pre-approval. I'm gonna give myself a thumbs down on this one. So as far as pre-approval goes, there's 2 reasons. First of all, I went to a bank. We were working with Wells Fargo, it looks like. Nothing against Wells Fargo, but you've really got 2 choices for getting pre-approved. You can go to a single bank, like a Wells Fargo, like a USAA or a Chase or a credit union, but they can only give you their fees, terms, rates, loan products, everything else. The second thing you can do is you can go to a mortgage broker, and that's what I strongly recommend that you do. So write that down. You want to get pre-approved from a mortgage broker. The reason I recommend mortgage brokers is they'll shop from 10, 15, 20 different investors or banks, and they can find who's got the best program for you, the best fees, the best rates, the best type of loan, and then they can write that mortgage for you. And then after you close, that'll get sold off to whichever bank you're gonna actually pay your payments to. If you shoot me an email, I'll be happy to send you a list of the ones that I currently recommend. The second thing that I didn't do great as far as pre-approval is I really didn't have enough cash in the bank, to be honest with you. I'm not sure that I had $2,000 to my name, which was how much I had to buy the house. The problem is not just that I wasn't able to get pre-approved for the loan and close on it, but if I would have actually closed on that house and the furnace went out or something, I mean, I don't think I would have had a dime to my name left over if my transmission on the car went out or I needed new tires or something. I mean, I had nothing. I was putting all my cash into the purchase, and that's a really stupid plan. I definitely would not recommend that. So make sure you've got a little bit of an emergency fund in the bank and that you've got plenty of cash so that if extra things do come up, you're not gonna be super stressed or strapped and you can afford those things. Number 3, I studied like crazy. I was super ambitious and I really, I had a direction I wanted to go. Now, I'm gonna give myself a thumbs up on this one, but here's why. And I'm not pointing it out to toot my own horn, but I'm saying, I think buyers need to just be more aggressive. They need to be more level-headed about what their money can afford them, but then go after it, man. Shoot for the dreams. Don't be sitting back there like you're some victim, being all bummed because interest rates are high. We were at 7% and I was a poor college kid and I was gonna make it happen, right? I didn't do everything right. I didn't close on it, but I think that there's way too many buyers nowadays that I don't wanna throw around the whole, well, we're millennials. Okay, no. If you want to do something, do it and make it happen. I wish I would have waited a little bit. I wish I would have saved some more money, but I think you should go for it. If you want to buy a duplex, do it. Duplexes are a lot more challenging. I'm very happy that I stuck with a townhome, which is what we eventually bought, spoiler alert. But I think you need to go for it. Do your research. I would definitely recommend talking to a local expert. Definitely do not just listen to what's on TikTok. Don't listen to what's going on around the country, especially with a shifting market. Talk to a local source wherever you're looking at buying a house so that you make sure you get good advice for your situation. Number 4, figuring out where to live. I'm gonna give myself a thumbs down on this one. Now, I'll give myself a little bit of grace. My budget was so limited at the time at $40,000 or $50,000, whatever. There wasn't a lot of options. I mean, I couldn't exactly be picky about where to live. I also was a single dude with no kids. And so, you know, crime and safety, and that wasn't really that big of a concern for me at the time. But I will say, fortunately for you, you've got access to channels like mine where you can go see neighborhood tours and you can figure out which are the best and worst places to live and where you feel most comfortable. I wish I would have done a little bit more research. I could have gotten a good rental income from that neighborhood, but it's also was one of the highest crime areas in all of St. Paul. So I didn't even know that at the time, and I wish I would have done a little more research. You can go check out on the channel. I've got all kinds of videos about which areas are high and low crime, where you can figure out that information. Just go find that for yourself and make some good choices in that. Lesson number 5 you need to know is regarding showings. Now, I did a ton of showings, and I'm giving myself a question mark on this one. I saw a ton of properties, and I'm very, very thankful to the agent that showed me all those. I will say, first of all, we're in a completely different market. In today's market, if I had had that mindset going into today's market, buying my first house in 2023, it would be a disaster. So you definitely don't want to have the mindset that you're going to go see dozens and dozens of homes. First of all, there just isn't that many available like there was after the market collapsed. So that's not really an option. However, the clients that I've had that have seen more than probably 5 or 6 homes before making an offer, they don't have the right mindset. They typically, I'm just gonna be honest with you, they feel entitled to getting more house than their budget is actually gonna afford them. You've really gotta have a level head about what your budget's gonna get you. You gotta be decided, you gotta be committed to purchasing a home, and then see what your money's gonna afford you in the area you're looking at. If you don't find something you like, you need to switch your criteria, but just simply waiting for the market to change or just waiting for that unicorn property to come up that all of a sudden you're gonna get this much house for this much budget, it's never gonna happen, right? Because there's gonna be a buyer that's willing to pay more than that. That's a terrible approach that I strongly caution buyers with in today's market. Number 6, the type of property. First of all, I think it was absolutely the right thing for me. So I will give myself a partial thumbs up for that. We started looking for a quad, then we went to a triplex, and then a duplex, and then frankly, we just couldn't afford to buy any of those things. We were competing with investors that were cash, and so we just kept getting outbid. So then eventually that pushed us over. We were forced to shift to a townhome. Now, if you want to buy a duplex, I am all for it. I said it before. I mean, I wish buyers had more ambition. However, I will say for us, it was actually a really good thing that even though now we can have rental properties, it was really good for us to have to start with a townhome. It taught you responsibility, it taught you how to pay your bills, it taught us as a newlywed couple how we work and who's paying the bills, and you know, am I managing the finances? Is Haley, she's staying at home, so then she did, and you get used to the responsibilities of home ownership. You get used to the stresses of having to make, you know, car payments and house payments and water bills and trash and electricity, and you get used to paying those things. If we had been immediately into a multifamily for our first property, I mean, a great example is a dear client that I had a couple years ago. She did that. Her family had been into multifamilies and they were really pushing her to buy a duplex. She did. She absolutely hated it. She was completely overwhelmed anytime there was a plumbing leak or anything else. And eventually she sold it and walked away and said, just forget it. She just wasn't ready for that. And that's the reality for most buyers. I would strongly encourage you, get into something that's more modest, spend less than you thought you were going to get, settle for something a little bit, because then you're gonna have the chance for some sweat equity, you're gonna have the chance to ease into adulthood, and I think that's a really good approach. Number 7 is price and expectations. Now I'll give myself a thumbs up on this. I don't wanna beat the dead horse, but this goes back to a couple of the points that I've made previously. I absolutely had my expectations real low because I knew my budget was low. And so that worked really well for us. I wasn't expecting too much. What I will say is I might have been a little too optimistic about my own skills and less realistic about the actual cash I had in the bank, as we've all been well aware now. I had a fine income, but it definitely wasn't enough to actually be able to afford for a new furnace or for major updates for that home. So I'll just say it again, make sure that you have your price point and your mental expectations in line. Talk to an agent, see what your money is gonna get you. You don't start with, well, I want this much house, so therefore I'm gonna be able to get it, even though my finances say I can afford this much. You've gotta start with, here's what my finances say I can get. All right, let's see what the money's gonna get us, what kind of a house that's gonna afford us. And then that's what we're going after, and you cannot expect more than your budget allows. Number 8, appraisal and repairs. I gotta give myself a big thumbs down. In today's market especially, I mean, it was kind of the Wild West back then. I don't want to justify anything then, but I will say in today's market, there is zero chance that I'm ever going to let one of my clients into a property to do any kind of work, period. We typically won't even let clients move some of their personal property into the garage, like as they're moving. If the seller's already moved out and buyer wants to just store some things there before closing, pretty much is never gonna happen, okay? This is definitely a no-no. It's not something that I should have been doing, to be honest, at the time. Somebody should have not allowed me to do that. But you're not making repairs to the home prior to, unless it's completely agreed to by buyers and sellers. Everybody's aware of it. And then even in that case, I don't know. That seller got a free, may or may not have gotten a free window and a bunch of different stuff that I paid for as the buyer. my financing fell through and I was out all that money, you would be out the same thing. So it really doesn't happen as much. Foreclosures are almost non-existent in today's market, but just be aware you are not doing any work into that property without explicit approval by the homeowners. Number 9, let's talk about sweat equity. Now, this is something that I did really well. I strongly encourage any first-time buyer to buy a house, honestly, that's ugly. I know everyone wants brand new and modern and fixed up, but if you can just pull yourself a little bit more towards a fixer-upper than you thought you were comfortable with, it's gonna be good for you in the long run. For example, when we did close on our first house, it was a little 2-bed, 1-bath townhome in Coon Rapids. It's so nostalgic. It was on Hummingbird Lane, I remember. It had a really ugly carpet. Everything was dated. It was very builder grade. I don't know, maybe it was built in the 80s or something. And so for us, we did some fairly basic minor repairs. I think we replaced a faucet or two, painted everything for sure, but very minor repairs. And we were able to sell that for a lot more. Fortunately for us at that time, the market was kind of at the bottom and we sort of rode the wave. So it wasn't all just my own genius and hard work. We rolled that equity into our second house. And so again, to my previous point, if you do kind of compromise, if you keep your budget low, if you're not too entitled with your first purchase, and if you have a little bit of margin of doing a little bit of sweat equity, replacing some ugly light fixtures, putting a new faucet or two, fresh paint, maybe some carpet, that sort of thing, that will throw your value up higher to even exceed the market. So if you're concerned about prices going down, this gives you a little bit of buffer. So if prices, maybe they stay flat or they do go down, well, you've put in some sweat equity, so then you're that much less likely to be underwater and not be able to sell your house. So we like that. That's in the worst case scenario. Of course, best case scenario is like what we had. The market went up and my equity went up, and so we had even that much more. I think when we sold that home, we walked away with, I don't know, $15,000 or $20,000 in cash, which to us at the time was just mind-blowing amounts of money. And you can do the same thing. So then we took that money, we rolled it into our second house. We got a single family. It was sweet, it was big, it was also kind of ugly. It was a second foreclosure as well, but we had some money to get into it with a little more comfort. We had a better emergency fund as a result of that, and we had a little bit of funds to put into it for some more sweat equity into our second property. So I'd strongly encourage you to do that. Buy a home that has some sweat equity. Number 10, most importantly, which we did really, really well, and I always want to stress with my buyers, you've got to be flexible and you've got to be adaptive. We started with one thing, we ended with something completely different, and to be honest with you, it was such a blessing in disguise for us. So if you're not immediately at this time able to get the thing that you think you want, just keep moving forward. Just keep getting what you can get, buy what your money's able to afford you. You still don't want to be renting because you're just throwing money away. You already know that. Rent's going to keep going up. Get into something to just start. Just start, take the first leap. Maybe you're settling like we did and we only were able to get a modest townhome. But I'm telling you what, now, 14, 12 years later, whatever it is, we're so incredibly glad that we did. We've got a ton of equity. We actually own 2 homes now. One's home rental. That one's probably about 60% paid off. And then we got our new home. That one's got some equity in it. And so now looking back, I'm so glad we did. But we had to be flexible, we had to be adaptive, we had to be willing to change our plans. Now, I'm sure you're really excited to get started. The first step for you is a buyer consult. I hope you will find my info in the description down below. A consult is just where I can help walk through your finances. I can make sure you're making these and many, many more smart decisions so that we can get you into your first house.